So we have a project. We have a project, we call it OM Champion Project.
Hello everyone and welcome to yet another episode of the Marseille View, where today we're going to debrief the victorious game of Marseille against Lyon. It's I believe the first game in about 6 games that Marseille have beaten Lyon, whether it's away or at home. So we're going to debrief that. I'm going to introduce the speakers. There's some new voices. You might recognize one of them from last season, but it will be his first of the season, and the other speaker will be his first of the podcast. But first and foremost, I just want to run through just what happened with the last podcast. So with the OM Lille game, so essentially it was a bit of a nightmare because the game was on Saturday and I was working on Sunday. I couldn't do the podcast then, and then obviously doing a podcast during the week is a bit difficult because of availabilities and stuff. So it was kind of pushed back to the next day, and then in the end we just thought, you know what, instead of just doing 2 podcasts in 2 days, let's just skip the Lille one and then just come back stronger for the Lyon game, hoping that we didn't miss the only Marseille game, the only Marseille win with the Lille game. But I mean, fortunately enough for us, it happened again. Villas-Boas is Marseille, and I have to admit, thanks to Villas-Boas' tactics, we managed to grab a win from Lyon, something that clearly does not happen often with this team. I'm sure all of the Marseille fans will probably made a big sound of relief at the end of that game. I mean, I sure did, but I will probably get your feelings on it. But I mean, without further ado, I'll probably introduce the speakers. So we'll start with the one that you guys have heard before. Hi Mo, how you doing?
Hi everybody. I'm good, Luca. How are you?
Yeah, where did you watch the game yesterday?
I was very fortunate to be among the press in the velodrome, so a frontline seat, one would say.
Yeah, how was did you get to meet Ero?
No, not this time. Well, I've met him a couple of times before. I don't know if he recognised me anymore. But,
actually, no. Good question to ask. It was McCourt there.
No, he wasn't. He didn't show up on the big screen.
Well, he seems to be a black cat, doesn't he?
Yeah, so I'm a bit surprised, but I think he was there against Lille last week.
Oh, okay. It's not too bad.
Which may have been sort of the opportunity cost, I suppose. But no, he wasn't there from what I could see.
Fair enough. So you watched it in the stands. From the TV's views, it was still impressive. But from your seat, how did you find the atmosphere before and during the game?
I mean, it was something to behold. I mean, obviously, I think we've all been to the stadium. We all know sort of how good it can be. But I think last night was one of the special nights. The once a year sort of atmosphere. I don't think we've seen something like this since the Europa League semi-final, and at least fortunately the result was something to match the atmosphere. It was really, really good. A lot of noise, a lot of sound. I know a lot of people mock the lights and the sound system, but
I personally hate it. I hate it.
You hated it?
Yeah.
My only complaint was maybe it was a bit too loud at one point, but so that's probably me just getting old. But it was basically a fantastic evening.
It's probably me being a little bit like anti-establishment, but I've got this like conspiracy theory that they just make the sound so loud so that when the supporters do have like bad things to say about the direction and the players, then they can just drown all the sound out.
Possibly.
And, yeah, honestly, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it anyway. So we'll get kind of your feel about the tifos and about the atmosphere a little bit further into the podcast. But before that, we'll probably introduce our second speaker. So it's his first on the show. So he's from the London group. We've been to the bar quite a few times to watch the games together. Raf, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Yeah, very nice, man. It's always good to wake up after a Marseille win, especially when it comes against them.
Yeah, exactly. Like this Monday wasn't as harsh as usual, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, we've been used to more difficult Mondays after Marseille Lyon.
exactly.
So you went to the. I don't want to do some like promoting like I did last week again, but you usually go to the London bar to watch the game, which you did again yesterday.
Yep.
How was the atmosphere there? Can you tell me a little
I
bit
was.
about it?
It was quite good. Like there was about 30, 40 people, so that's quite nice. And people were motivated, quite a new faces and so on. Like so, there was some singing and everything. Like yeah, it was really nice, a really nice atmosphere. And some people were just traveling to London at that stage and come to see the game with us. So that was quite nice actually.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, Ben was talking about it the other time against PSG. There was about 50 people, and I expect the atmosphere inside the bar was a little bit happier than the PSG game.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I guess so. I wasn't there for the PSG game, unfortunately, but yeah, like everyone was happy and everything. Like having a win and a big win against a big team. It's the first time since we have been brought back, probably. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was a good atmosphere, definitely.
Yeah, so yeah, big win for Aero, Villas-Boas and Marcourt in general. So we're just going to jump into our general impressions of the game. I'll speak. I'll give you my impression of the game after you guys. I'll start with you, Mo. So from the stands, you probably had a bit of a different experience from when you're watching on the TV. What were you expecting coming into this game, and kind of how did it pan out?
Well, I was expecting something not too dissimilar to how sort of the previous OM Lyon games have played out. In that OM would sit back, try and absorb a lot of the pressure, not sort of overplay their hand, but allow sort of Lyon to play their way and just sort of a bit of a disjointed sort of performance going forward. Try and nick a goal, try and pick out holes in the Lyon midfield, which is how it went earlier this year when they lost 3-0 in May, before Lyon opened up the game pretty well. So I was expecting, because of the quality of the players that Lyon have, especially on the counter, that's something, especially when I saw, Dimitri Payet, who before yesterday could have been a 50-50 in terms of performance, which Payet would turn up. He certainly hasn't played well for the past month or two at the very least.
Seemed to have saved it all up for yesterday.
Well, exactly. And then you saw on the team sheet Maxime Lopez on the right. How effective was he as a winger? Is he going to be able to link up for, going forward? Is it going to be, it's very rare that you have a slower player in front of, your faster winger.
Yeah, and it felt a lot it felt a lot like a default choice as well. You've tried Germain, you've tried Rodonic, you've tried Sarr.
And it was like, I've got no other choice. Now's the time. But maybe, AVB has obviously clearly seen something, or clearly has dictated the tempo. But what it looked like in the stand is that OM were absolutely all over Lyon in that first half. Save for the, I think, was it Cornet strike on Mandanda, the save. Lyon could not play their game well. The only negative that I had from that first half was Sarr leaving a lot of space in behind the right. There was a lot of space for him for Lyon to play into. I thought that he would forget that actually he's a right back, defensively minded right back. He has sort of the lapses that Sakai normally doesn't have, because Sakai is more of a guy that will only go forward when he's attacking, but Sarr's running up and down the whole time. And Lyon, they've got very adept passes of the ball, very quick movement, and they would obviously find that wing. But the central defense did well, the defensive midfielders did well. Absolutely, the first half looked absolutely superb, and 2 goals to boot. And obviously, I think both of you will agree with me on this. The second goal was something of a complete beauty, because the stadium was already up in arms when Payet did that slide tackle. Already congratulating, because not only did he score, but he's not the sort of fat, lazy, couldn't care less Payet. This was a guy that hurtled all the way back, performed an incredible slide tackle, and then went on, started the move and completed it. And by 10 seconds later, everyone absolutely completely lost their shit. So that was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
it was the same at the bar, to be honest. Like even on the tackle, everyone was like, "What? What happened?"
Yeah,
crazy. Like.
Actually, I'll let you speak, Raf. What did you think about the game?
So before the game, I was like, I didn't know what to expect, as we have 2 teams that are quite inconsistent at the beginning of the season. We don't know really what to expect. I know it'd be a tight game, but that's it. And then when it started and you see like the intensity the players were putting on the pressures, midfield that was literally walking on the Lyon midfield. I was like pretty impressed, to be honest. I wasn't really expecting that much intensity and technical and way to move the ball really quickly forwards and really high pressure. And I think that's thanks to Camara being the midfield to be able to press that high and so on. And yeah, in the first half, Lyon haven't exist. Like, I'm currently finishing to watch a game right now again. It's just they didn't exist in the first half, and that was really impressive. Yeah, Payet has done masterclass. The only bad point, as Mo said, was clearly Sarr, which was a weak link in everything. Has been beaten on one-on-one versus Cornet, let some space and everything, but
And
yeah.
I'm absolutely sure, just to add to that point, Ralph, that Rudy Garcia has probably said, I know Sarr very well. Attack that way. Because he's the one obviously put him in that position in the first place. So I'm guessing that he used that.
Yeah, there is that, and also I think as he put Lopez at the right wing, which was clear, didn't know what to expect. Sarr has to project a bit more to take his to play as a winger sometimes, and so that might have led some space for Cornet and everything. And luckily, it was Cornet on the left side of Lyon, I think.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight a little bit, comment on that when Mo said it as well. But even when Sarr was not kind of 2 yards behind his opponent, when he actually made the tackles that were meaningful, like the one he did just before the halftime against Cornet, they're such high risk tackles, and he was already on a yellow. That alone, 3-4 times, I was so scared that he would just wipe him out and get a red.
Yeah.
And his tackle on this yellow was absolutely stupid. I thought it was Amavi. He could have taken a red on that.
And it was 60 yards away from his box. Why?
Yeah. Absolutely nonsense. The beginning of the game from Sarr has been absolutely awful. Then it's slightly better, but yeah, the beginning was really, really difficult.
I just want to add to that. I think mainly it's because he, in space, he doesn't know what to do. In space, and OM play with a lot of space. If you look at the back four, there's a lot of space in between each defender. They don't play compact, and the other team loves to stretch OM out. But if you saw, obviously, in the second half, there was no space. Because, all the attacking players came off. Everybody was put back. He felt more confident knowing that within 5 meters there's going to be 2 or 3 teammates. And so it was easier to close down. It was easier to play short passes. But obviously when OM were attacking, Alvaro or German or Radonjic, whoever's playing on his flank or wherever he is, they're so far away. And maybe he's not that confident in his ability. So maybe he fits as a defensively minded in a formation. But in attacking formation, he thinks that basically I'm a right winger playing at a right back. Let me attack and run and do 1-2s or whatever.
There is this, and also he is missing some consistency. He has been playing right wing, right back. He's changing barely every game, and so obviously for a player which has not been trained as a defender, it might take a little bit of time to get back his habits and how he should play and be positioned at that position. So that could be a small excuse. At least for the beginning of the game, but yeah, I agree with what you said.
He's gonna face. It's not my life, so I don't really care. But he's gonna face a lot of problems when once he moves on from Marseille, because he's, like you said, he hasn't been trained as a defender. But at this point, he is a defender. He's not good enough to play on the wing, even for a Ligue 1 team. So he's gonna struggle a lot to find his feet. And when he finally moves on from Marseille and gets to another team, I might see him in a 3-5-2, maybe as a winger, but he's still, like you said, Mo. He leaves a lot of space, so I'm not sure where he's going to fit for his future.
Yeah, it stays like this that I really miss JJ.
You know what? I actually liked JJ. I actually really liked him.
I really did.
Yeah.
I was a big fan, and he was the perfect mix of defense and attacking rigor.
Yeah.
And not too stupid, not too sort of high level.
Yeah, I actually really liked him. To be fair.
It was a perfect soldier, definitely.
Yeah, right. So before we move on to line by line, you guys talked a lot about the first half and how we just basically walked all over Lyon. But I want to get your thoughts on the second half, because whether it's because of the red card, but even before the red card, we seemed very, very tense. It felt like we just...
Why don't you go first with that? What do you think?
I don't know. People blame the fact that the game was stopped because of flares and stuff. So it says it broke our momentum and basically
It did.
I think but I think overall, when you look at the physiology of the match and how everyone expected to go, I don't think anyone really expected us to be winning 2-0 at halftime and going back on the pitch, and it is difficult, to go back from such a dominating half and say, right, let's do it again, You've lost a lot of energy, and then it's difficult, even though everyone's pushing you to carry on. And I feel like there was a little bit of complacency. Alvaro Gonzalez's first yellow was avoidable. I mean, it's not his fault. He had to make that challenge. But I mean, before, it felt like coming out the half, everyone seemed a little bit deflated, and obviously that led up to the red card, which was deserved. And then we kind of shut ourselves. But being supporters, all the players, I felt, it was kind of just like, well, let's just hold on for half an hour, which is understandable, but it's really not how, coming out of this to the second half, how I thought this game would end. I thought we were going to dominate for the rest of the match, and even though Lyon didn't show that much in the second half, I feel like we just gave them hope for no reason.
I think one of the things that disturb us, like in the second half, is the fact that Rudy Garcia get out Ren Adelaide, which was the only good player on the pitch, but he changed the positioning of its midfield, and we were on one-on-one on this midfield. And so it took a little bit of time to get used to how to press with this thing under this big tactic system. And with that, then there was a first yellow of Alvaro, but getting out of his game, then the small mistakes on the goal, and all of this like just dropped down a little bit mentality of the team, which was also physically really tired.
Yeah.
And the fact to be back at 10 against 11 just push everyone like a new spirit, and okay, we have to keep this and just fight for this. And they fought very, very well. Like, it was really an example to defend at 10 against 11, I think.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Mo, since you're insider journalist and on the ground in Marseille, talking about the second goal, did they clear up? What happened?
Sorry, what do you mean clear up?
Like, because Alvaro Gonzalez just ducked out of the way, and then Mandanda was like, did we get to the end of that?
No, I mean, first of all, like, he was clearly at fault for that second goal. I think there was a bit of a miscommunication, and something that we saw up in the stands was that, and because we have up in the press box, you have like the small monitors, so you can actually see like from different angles, a lot closer, something that you might not see like through the naked eye. It looked like Mandanda and Alvaro had a misunderstanding. So when the ball came in, Alvaro didn't know whether to come off the challenge and not challenge Dembele, and Mandanda sort of started to move out, but then was like, I'm going to stay. And that just gave Dembele the whole space that to do his work. And
I mean, if you're in doubt, just go for it.
Exactly. Even if you clatter your own players, like, it's just. But there was misunderstanding. Actually, after the game, once all the players were actually on the other side under the Firajusu, celebrating. Mandanda and Alvaro were sort of talking tactics to each other, very animated, obviously very lovingly, but I was like, oh, I didn't know what you said, oh, it's my mistake, or something like that, basically rehashing the goal. So there was clearly something.
It's the second time this happens as well. Kamara did that against PSG.
I don't know if it's a language barrier. I don't know if it's, there's clearly, not complete misunderstanding, like in general terms, but on a footballing level, there needs to be sort of like, something that's very, very clear. But in the second half, my thoughts were that OM is a very fragile team in terms of like, for results to go the way they do, it needs everybody to give 110%, because in this sort of 11, you've got players that are clearly world class when they're playing. Like Payet in particular obviously was amazing, man of the match. Rongier was immense. Camara was superb. And when these guys are playing well, they can play in any Ligue 1 team. They can play in top European leagues or whatever, right? And this team also has numerous studs. Obviously, I'm not going to name who they are because, frankly, everybody deserves credit for a really good performance yesterday. But there are duds who, when they move on from Marseille, will not play at a team of that level again. Yeah. So for results to come, like against top sides, everybody needs to give 100%. When one person fails, then the whole game can sort of go to shit. And Alvaro was that defender yesterday, even though he's been fantastic so far this season. He had a poor second half, and it was the first miscommunication which we just talked about with Mandanda, and then the red card. He was the one that sort of changed the game plan. And AVB said, and he was very sort of animated on the touchline. He said earlier this week, last week, don't lose your heads, play with passion, think of every situation. You might be 1-0 down, or you might be 2-0 up, or you need to manage the game up the head. Don't look at, the tifo is great and the fan support is going to be wonderful, but don't look up. Don't sort of take it all in and play out of it, because obviously that sort of atmosphere affected the last big OL clash in 2015, where when Valbuena was back, everybody just sort of lost their heads and was Valbuena left, right, and centre, just to sort of cheer up the crowd. He was just focus on the tactics we have in place, and and that worked well for 65 minutes up until Alvaro. Obviously, the second yellow, the red card, was clearly deserved, and I thought that was actually one of the smart decisions he's made, because Dembele was through.
Yeah, you had to do that.
That was 100%. That was not oh, you idiot. And a lot of people were just actually applauded him off.
Yeah.
Because, it is what it is. And it was good to see defensively that when OM need to defend, they could sit back. Like in 2018, just before the Europa League final, it was 2-3 months, OM were defensively solid. They would concede maybe one goal, but they would not let the opponents have a lot of shots.
Yeah.
They really, really kept Lyon at bay. And obviously, in hindsight, we didn't know what was coming when Alvaro was sent off, because I thought, that's it. We're going to throw away the game. These players are going to sort of lose another series. All these bad thoughts are sort of swirling around, and the temperature was rising up in the stadium. But if you look at it, up and from when Alvaro got sent off to the Terrier shots on 86 minutes, Mandanda did absolutely nothing. Yep. He did not touch the ball absolutely once. There was one free kick that went wide, but he was sort of jogging to the post, but he didn't touch the ball whatsoever. And that just goes to show that defensively we were absolutely awesome. The challenges, no player was, every player was tracking back, even if the majority of the time we were in our own half. They really, really put in the effort, and that's what made me, it's always in sort of these occasions you think, if you could play like that against Lyon, who destroyed Benfica on the field earlier this week, who have good players, who cost clearly more, double, what you're worth. Why can't you do it every week?
I agree.
Why can't you do it against Amiens? Why can't you do it against? Because against Amiens, it was 1-1 at one point, and then they threw it away.
Yeah.
You threw it away. Why can't you have employed those tactics then?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good thing that we can start beating the big guns. Gives us a bit of hope if we ever make it to the Champions League. Raf, I'll give you the talking stick in just a second. We'll move on to the players line by line. We've already talked about Bunassar, and we have just covered Alvaro Gonzalez. We'll probably skip over them, but we'll start from the back line. Mandanda had a alright game, I guess. He did. He had a few saves, but in the second half, what really saved him is just Lyon's kind of bad luck. The really close shots they had just went so close to going in. He was just standing still, and if it was on target, it would have gone in. How did you, Raf? What did you think about Mandela's performance yesterday?
I think what was really important is on the first shot of Cornet, when Sarr was completely 2 meters behind him, and they make that save. I think it puts everyone in a good mentality, because usually this kind of attacking phase from the opponent end up in a goal, and we're all start to depress and just lost the game. This save, I think, was key for the mindset of the whole team for after that. Then, indeed, he didn't have much to do. The strongest shots from Lyon and something were out of target anyway, despite the goal. So pretty much was a good game. It was a leader. It was driving people, especially when we went down to 10. So yeah, I think he had a good game, even if he hasn't done that much.
Yeah. I mean, it's not much. I mean, it's a good thing. I mean, we spent so many games at the start of the season where you can't say enough good things about Mandanda, which is a worrying sign. You don't want to see your goalkeeper having to make that many saves. So it's kind of a good thing that now it's he's not often being put in a position where he has to make a save, but he is still able to make that critical, like you say, momentum shifting kind of play that just makes your defense, who's very, very young, we forget how young our defense is, more confident, more likely to actually, play with the ball in their feet instead of just being nervous and kicking it out. And I mean, apart from the blunder that was the Lyon goal, and like Mo said, it's up to discussion whose fault it was. I thought he was imperial. Mo, you've talked extensively on Bunasar and Alvaro Gonzalez, so I'll let you finish up the back line. Amavi and Chaitasa might be the duds you were referring to in our team. What did you make of them?
Amavi wasn't too bad yesterday.
He's been playing well since he's back.
Exactly. He wasn't too bad yesterday. He thought he was a bit nervy. I thought he was the most nervous player in that first half. Possibly because that it was sort of that flank that Lyon has done so much damage over the last 2 years. So it's understandable that he was a bit iffy, but he settled really, really well. And just like everyone else in the second half, he did a great job in closing down that lane. Especially it was because of his decent defensive effort that Cornet and Traoré had an absolute woeful game, except for Traoré's assist for Dembele, which I thought I'm not going to there's definitely been 100 times where Amavi has obviously played poorer than that. But I will also give him the benefit of that because you could not see a thing in the stadium, and I've got a video if anyone wants to see it. But you really, really could not see a thing. And when the game kicked off, I still couldn't see a thing. Yeah. So we all everybody was just looking at sort of the big screen and the pitch side monitors and the TVs in the press box as well. So that goal came because of where the visibility was still poor. And I like to think that the organizers of the tifo and the pyrotechnics, all that sort of stuff, may have been like, oh shit, like maybe
a bit too much.
It started off so well in that there was white and blue smoke coming off the stands, but it normally just stays on the virage and just like rots up. But this one enveloped the whole ground really, really quickly, maybe because it was from both sides of the stadium. So I think it got away with them a little bit. Shletasar, I'd like to really like Shletasar. I really, I give him the most benefit of the doubt of any of the poor players that we've had in defense and midfield and attack. Where I think most people know that I'm very quick to criticize a player when I don't like him, and I really like to give Shletasar. But again, yesterday he was okay, and I think he was only. That's the best I can say, and he was only okay because Alvaro was mainly there for the first half, but in the second half, OM had to play with more of the back. Camara dropped back, and he was still really, really nervous. It was only fortunate for us that Lyon rarely did play through the middle, and if they did, the Rongier was absolutely awesome. Streetman came on for later on. There were other opportunities. Like a second line of defense or something. I didn't think he was absolutely incredible, but maybe he was mainly a passenger. But in the end, he contributed to, a solid defensive victory. In fact, I thought he was mainly going to be the likelier one to get a red card because, he was leaving a lot of space.
And he got a red card in both games last season.
Exactly. So I thought he was going to complete the bloody hat trick. Yeah. And he left a lot of space on occasions, but fortunately, Lyon were just absolutely hopeless and toothless.
Yeah.
So the defense overall weren't actually all that. I think a lot of you can say that it was a whole team effort. So it's hard to single out like a memorable rearguard performance that people will talk about forever. But it was, it was adequate. I think Mondonda had not much to do in the second half. The first half, Lyon did have a couple opportunities. In the second half, all 11 players or 10 players afterwards really just put their all in. So I don't want to single out, sort of the back line for any commendable performances.
Yeah. We'll go through the players. I do want to obviously spend a bit of time at the end of the podcast to talk about the incidents outside, because I think that was very polarizing, and it's probably gonna maybe cause a bit of fines and a bit of problems for Marseille down the line. So what I'll do, I'll probably ask each of you to kind of go through player by player. If the other person wants to chime in and give a comment, then that's absolutely fine, obviously. But don't be like sad if I like skip you for like one of the players. Talking about that, Raf, Kamara played I think it's his third game in a row as a CDM. And
That's the second. He didn't start on Lille. Or maybe I got it wrong, but yeah, fair enough.
Oh yeah, maybe. Actually, might be, yeah. So it's a second, yeah. So he seems just so comfortable in that position, and it really begs the question when in the post conference press conference, he says, I still want to play as a centre back and stuff, and we've seen how much he struggled this year playing centre back, and you see him now as a CDM. He looks so much more free, so much more aggressive, so much more in control of the midfield compared to when Strootman's in the midfield. What do you think of him in that position, and how does it bode for him in the future?
So first, I think like right now he's the player we need in the midfield, in the sense of he has really good capacity with the ball. He has the physics, how to tackle, to manage his guy, to put pressure. It is actually doing what Strootman wanted to do but can't do, basically.
Yeah.
And he's able to do it very well. In terms of his future, I do think he will have a great career as a central defender. The point is, he's only 19. Like, the prime for a central defender is 28 to 33. He still have 10 years in front of him to learn how to manage all these kind of things, which takes time, so they're really difficult. So if he can, the good thing is putting him as in the midfield allows him to play, to keep his confidence on, not to be put back on the bench and lose his momentum and everything. Continue playing and still learn, basically. And I think it could be a really good thing. So first for Marseille, because we do need him in the midfield right now, because we don't have any defensive midfielder. It's not Strootman positioning. And it would be good for his career to settle there and then go back down when he will have more experience, basically.
Yeah. Okay. I totally agree. It seems really the player that is in the right time, because we don't have a central defending midfielder, and it's like Strootman is clearly not comfortable in that position, and he seems to be the solution, at least for now, anyway.
Yeah.
So moving on to Rongier, who played. Did he get subbed off for Strootman? No, I think he played the whole game, didn't he? How did you think Rongier did?
I thought it was awesome. And I agree with Villas-Boas when he said that he played probably his best match in the OM shirts. He was really combative. He was very, very strong in the tackles. I can't remember. I think maybe he got booked at one point. I'm not entirely sure, but he was really, really combative in the middle. And the Lyon triangle, they really just couldn't handle him. I thought Aouar looked pretty weak in the midfield duels. He played the balls really, really well. He moved, across the left and right, which is exactly what we needed. In terms of last year, especially when we had Gustavo and Strootman on the same pitch, we missed a bit of that dynamic switch between the left and the right wing. So we were forced to either hoof it up to the wingers or play a little bit flat-footed through the middle, which could take time in a phase of play. But I really, really enjoyed Rongier yesterday. He not only was really useful in liberating players like Lopez to charge down, because he had the sort of the confidence and stability to sort of just sit back, aid Kamara, but also put in more effort in just spraying the ball forward, left and right for Payet. And I'm actually interested to see sort of the tactical maps or the heat maps in terms of the movement, because I felt like he was the engine in allowing Payet to cut in, do his business in off the left. Lopez would quite often charge to the final third. He was very, very good. And what I was also found interesting was that in the second half he was practically a leader, yelling at players to get into position, pointing where players should follow around, and just hoofing the ball where needed. I really, really enjoyed that.
Yeah, and people, you've mentioned it at the start, but people do say Payet does choose his games, and sometimes it's just 50-50 chance that he's actually going to get up to actually play well. But we know that he's best not when he's stuck on drifting wide on the left side, but when he's like this kind of electron that kind of runs around all of the midfield and is able to kind of step away from his defensive task and kind of linger between the lines. And maybe the fact that Rongier was so dominant in being a box-to-box midfielder and keeping the ball and allowing Payet to not have so much defensive responsibility might have been the reason why he was so good.
Indeed, completely agree.
Cool, Raf. Have you anything to mention about Rongier, or do you want to move to Sanson?
Yeah, I think everything has been said on him, to be honest.
Yeah, cool. What do you think about? So Sanson had a kind of similar role. It's kind of the dirty role, the Busquets role. Not that I want to compare the two players, but kind of in that role where you don't really see him often, but when you actually just kind of take 5 minutes of the game and just look at him, he was involved in nearly like every single possession of the game, wasn't he?
Okay, so like the grudge I have with Sanson for most of the time, but this game was one of his good game, and he didn't do as much. So what generally I blame him is he don't know how to pace the game. He's just always like trying to take the space and run or trying to move forward all every single time. But in this situation where he was surrounded by Payet, Camara, Rongier, Lopez, Benedetto that were really good with the ball, every time he tried to take any space, it was covering somewhere, it was pressing was really accurate, and there was people around him. And so I do think it's his best game so far this season, and especially the second half, where every single time when we were at 10, he took the ball, run on outside the pitch, and just keeps the ball, allow us to want time to let everyone goes up, get back in place, and yeah, he has done a really good game. I need to confess.
Yeah, it was about time, wasn't it? Because he's been often. We've also often in this podcast. We've also, when we debrief the games, we also kind of clump Lopez and Sanson as like, we debrief them together, and they're usually more than underwhelming. So it was about time that Sanson actually had kind of this reference game that you can look back upon and you say, this is the Sanson that you want, and that he shows you that he can actually rise up to big games and to the big occasions.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing which is impressive with him is physical. Like, these guys never stop running, and in this scenario, it was one of the players we needed on the pitch, and that was one of the things I didn't understand from the PSG game, why he wasn't. Like, it's definitely the kind of player when you need to press really high, when you know there will be a really high intensity you need on the pitch, and you need him to help the team through that. Like, he's a kind of mad dog, and just if we can control his mad dog side, he can be a really nice player.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. So moving on to the front trio, officially it was a 4-3-3. I don't know kind of what position you would give Payet and Lopez. They were not really like wide playing wingers, like you'd see more conventionally. We'll probably start with Lopez, because you did talk about Lopez a little bit in your introduction. He was definitely the point of interrogation when you look at the squad. Was it just a choice by default? Was Villas-Boas just trying something out of desperation? But when you look at how the game went, there was clearly a method in his madness, and Lopez was, dare I say, like essential to the way we played in the first half.
It was very essential. And what I felt like I noticed was that it wasn't so much an advanced 4-3-3. It might have looked like I like to think it was more of a 4-5-1. But maybe inverted, because I felt that Payet and Lopez were both playing with the inside quite a lot, rather than hugging the touchline. Well, maybe probably Payet was for most of the first half, but Lopez certainly wasn't sort of your traditional winger in running down to the corner and trying to deliver across. And I'd actually like to see that he barely even, to my remembrance, delivered like a full-blown cross. So it wasn't a pure 4-3-3 by any means. And if you look at the second goal, he was someone that sort of picked up the ball in his typical midfield position in front of the defensive midfielder, and then run into the box or try and find space. And definitely more advanced than Sanson was at the very least.
Mm. And people will argue that Payet did everything for the second goal, and in large parts he did. He's the one that got the ball back, he's the one that did the pass. but Lopez was involved, and one criticism.
Lopez was
yeah,
pretty key because
yeah.
obviously if he doesn't have the footballing intelligence to run and sort of look for a good ball, and obviously he had Lyon players charging down on him as well, so running not just into a safe space but into the dangerous areas, holding off any sort of defensive threat from the opposition, and then releasing the ball to Payet, which was quick, it was sharp, the passing was on point, and it enabled the goal. But if a weaker player or a less intelligent player would have just gone to the outside, held up the ball, step back, hold up, and then spray the ball back in defense or try and hold on to position. And we've been guilty of that so many times before.
And
So,
it's not a weaker player. It's him. It's one of the criticisms you've had is the fact that even though he seems to have this technical genius and this ability to pick out good passes. Or someone's rustling their mic, by the way.
Sorry.
Maybe you're okay. Sorry. The one criticism that people have of Lopez is that he's not decisive enough. You don't find him in the final third. You don't find him doing the assist, and then obviously you don't find him he's not the most important player to score a goal.
Maybe it was AVB's idea. He was like, well, you're going to the deep end now, so you are the final line of attack. You're responsible as Benedetto, as Payet in unlocking these players instead of you don't run into the final third and then pass the ball backwards. So maybe Villas-Boas has clearly seen that and said, well, you're going to be playing far more up front.
No, I definitely
rather
agree.
than the safety of midfield where it's just about passing sideways. So, I mean, whatever it was, it worked to some extent yesterday. So,
Yeah, I agree.
Well done to Lopez.
And Lopez was key because his positioning was he had to be behind the Lyon midfield, which was kind of their weakness in the beginning of the season. And so with Lopez behind the lines between the defense and the midfield, then he can give the ball to Payet, to Sanson, to Benedetto that were there and try to create some game from there. And I think it was a really good positioning and strategically smart to put Lopez there instead of in front of this midfield line where he tends to always go back and this kind of thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Well, actually, Raf, I'll let you speak for the next player. He's a player that's been very controversial on this podcast because, and on Twitter in general, there's a very clear line between people who find Dario Benedetto essential to the build-up of the game, the way he kind of picks out this, very quick, easy 1-2 passes, the way he can hold up the ball, seems, very at ease with fighting off defenders. And some of the Twitter that's saying, well, he's still not decisive enough. He hasn't scored in nearly 6-7 games now. He's not involved enough in the final third. I personally think that he's essential. We don't need a target man. We need like kind of an Inzaghi type of player that that you don't see a lot of the game, but then that can be deadly, and not necessarily through a shot and a goal, but through his his chested one-touch pass, his back heels that go straight to Payet and puts him in a great position. What do you make out of Benedetto? Are you more on the side of the critics, or are you still hopeful?
No, I really like this player. I find it really smart. He's one of the players that knows what football means. Basically, he's playing very well with Payet, with Lopez, with the midfield. I do like the fact that he's always moving to the good space and everything. He didn't have a really good game yesterday. Sometimes his positioning was a bit off. Like, for example, on the ball from Bunassa, which was clearly he had to stop his running, not run to the first post, just wait and push the ball in. But I do think currently the reason he's less good, less decisive, is because it's the first time in the last 2 years he's doing so many games in a row. Like, he has always got small injuries and things like that when he was in Argentina following his big injuries. And it's the first time he's having 10, 12 games in a row. And first is a defense which is more physical than in Argentina, and sometimes 3 defenders which is not used to. And so it's a different championship for him, and he has to get the habits and settle in again in this championship. But I do really like this player, and I do think with time and maybe the international break will give him some good, and we'll be see another Benedetto in 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. It's not even that. I'm hopeful. Even if he carries on this trend, obviously he needs to score more goals to a certain extent. You can't just not score a goal in 8 goals in 8 games. But if you score 1 goal every 3 games and you give me that kind of production where you're always a striker that defenders have to worry about, that even if you're marked just with just one touch, you can just break down a whole back line. For me, that's enough. I'm perfectly content with that. And the last player obviously is Payet. Obviously because of the time, I'd like to link his performance and talk about his performance linked with a bit of drama that happened this week. So for those who haven't followed the game or just follow just the game and not the surrounding noise, Payet was in a press conference, like in the traditional pre-game conference on Thursday, and he had not too many nice things to say about Lyon's coach and ex-Marseille coach Rudy Garcia. Just saying basically that he's a bit hypocritical, the way that he just moves to Lyon after saying all these things about the Lyon players and stuff. For me, the usual Marseille-Lyon kind of digs and kind of provocation, manipulation in the media, but we've seen too many times in recent years when Marseille players say things in the media before a game and then they just have to eat their words. This time, Payet has just completely risen to the occasion, and he was world-class Payet. He was everywhere. He even in the first half, he's the player that won the most balls in defense. He managed to actually make 5 successful tackles and get the ball. Like, he was like our best defender in the first half. So, what did you guys make of Payet, and what do you think? Because a lot of people were criticizing him for speaking out in the media before the game, saying that it's a usual thing. You don't give bold material to the other team to rise up to the game. What did you think?
I looked first in amusement, then a bit in concern, pre-match of his comments, because obviously, like you just mentioned, there's been numerous occasions where OM have, been forced to eat their words after the game, where it just wasn't necessary, and it didn't fit in with the sort of the professional build-up that we were targeting for this game, like discreet and just do our talking on the pitch. So when he really ripped into Rudy Garcia, he tried to also go to the Lyon players and saying, well, you won't believe what he said about you 5 months ago, when it's a bit strange, and clearly he doesn't like Rudy Garcia, and it sort of shone a light as well on just how bad things were last season behind the curtain, because he said that we didn't end on good terms or whatever, and I just felt that Payet is a very passionate player. So when there's a prize on the line, or when there's something worth fighting for, or a reputation worth claiming for, he will give it his all. It doesn't come all the time. It should remain a criticism that he's unable to sort of be great, or be as destructive as he can be. If you look at what he did yesterday, and then how he's approached games against Amiens and Rennes, Dijon, Montpellier, and you're thinking, what the hell? Like, why can't you do that in those games?
Yeah.
It was sort of the form that, and somebody actually said, is there an international tournament coming up? Because Payet is obviously clearly doing his level best to sneak some rise, as he did in the 4 or 5 months before the World Cup in 2018. But he was absolutely incredible yesterday. I think we've touched on it so much, but he was stunning. He was attacking. His attacking prowess was incredible. His defensive ability, which is a side of him that we rarely ever see. And it's just the Payet that we know he can be. We've seen it in 2014, 15, 17, 18. And we haven't seen it yet this year, and I just don't want to see 1 or 2 games a season, and then he was, kudos to him for really getting the chip off his shoulder in just really announcing, and obviously he deserves credit for not only destroying Garcia in the press conference, but actually having you put him his money where his mouth is, and actually do his talking on the pitch, and it just made Garcia look all the more silly for his management of Payet, and Lyon players will really see maybe perhaps they will see what if Payet, who's a genius and a good player in his own right, says this about Rudy Garcia, then we're going to have to also keep an eye out for him as well.
Even more after this game, after losing to Marseille, if I was a Lyon fan or even player, it's asking about the legitimacy of Payet's comments, and two, just asking yourself real questions on Garcia's. He's the only variable that changed between Marseille's inability to win any big game.
And Marseille's a worse team with less players this time round, and players whose quality is declining, is aging, etc. And it is Garcia, and I'd be worried if I was a Lyon fan, knowing that they know how good Payet is. There's no question about that. And Garcia's management so far, where he's probably shunning the sort of the Lyon DNA and bringing in his own ideas and all that sort of stuff. Maybe Garcia is actually part of it, because if Genesio was still coach, I don't know whether we would have won that game.
Yeah, we wouldn't, honestly.
Variable, and it just goes to show that he's not a great coach anymore.
Yeah. The second news that I want to talk about, and I'll go to you after, but obviously Mo, feel free to come in as well, is the pre-game antique. So it was a big party in Marseille. There was a lot of flares, a lot of firecrackers all over Marseille, and then when the Lyon bus came into the stadium, you could see clearly that the bus was people had thrown stones at the bus, which had happened before, but obviously Olas used this as a threat to stop the game, saying that if it continues, that it's in the game, and then even after the game to give excuses for the loss. He said they were intimidated by the supporters' I guess criminal behavior, but just to make sure we're not biased there, police did tell Olas to not use a Lyon branded bus, and he's done it in the past before where he ignores it because he wants to provoke everyone, and he wants to attract the antiques and attract the criminal behavior to then have fuel to basically make a fire and then to get Marseille in trouble. And I guess we can also talk about the flares and the fact that the game had to be stopped halfway through. Raf, what did you think about this? One, do you think it really had an impact on the game? And two, what do you expect coming out in the next few days about the sanctions?
So, I guess obviously it has to have an impact. People are humans. When you have some stuff thrown at your bus, obviously it has to impact you, and then maybe not as much as Olas wants us to believe, but it has to have an impact. But I still think it's less than an impact that the atmosphere in the stadium and the pressure and everything, and all this kind of thing. Of course, Olas didn't follow the authorities' advice to have kind of safety already there in case some things went wrong, because he knew what happened, because there are some stupid people that think that sending stone is smart, and attempting people's lives or injuries is something that deserves to be done just because of our enemies, which is pretty stupid. But yeah, it has to have an impact. Same, the flares might have an impact. I'm not 100% sure for that. But the consequences we will know is we will have an empty stadium for 1 or 2 games. We know that, and some fines and everything. But this is what the league always do, that the league never understands. And that was the same thing. I think it was last year Bordeaux celebrates an anniversary too, and they put some flares and got 2 or 3 games without anyone in the stadium or something like that. They don't care, it's celebration. They're just flares, let's put some sanctions, and that's it. And especially as there was so proper TV time, that affected the TV time, so I expect it to be really bad.
Yeah, do you want to jump in, Mo?
I was sort of hoping for a swearing-free podcast, but I think
Go
I
for it,
might
mate.
fail here. But I think Olas is a fucking loser, if you
Yeah.
excuse my French. First of all, like you mentioned with the police thing, he's a stuntman, okay? And everybody loves to. He's a pantomime villain, and if you're on that bus, knowing that the bus, if I'm on a bus essentially, and I'm traveling to a destination, I know a destination that is likely going to be trouble. Any sane human would sort of follow security advice and take, you know, the least worst option. You know, in that
Yeah.
go in an unmarked bus, you know, go in an unmarked bus with police, a police motorcade or whatever it might be, etc. His ego is harming or potentially harming the safety of his own players, his staff, and whatever. Okay, so he comes in with a massive great bus with a massive logo of Lyon adorned to it, and yes, it's, you know, the human race is mixed up of good people and bad people everywhere, and Marseille is not immune to that. We saw it in Liverpool, you know, in Man City. It's happened everywhere. It's not Marseille being a city of, you know, like stupid or criminal people. It happens everywhere.
That's what Olas called it. He said they enter the city of lawless.
A lawlessness city where it's the same in everywhere else. Go to Italy, go to Turkey, go to Eastern Europe. It's the same thing, all right. And personally, for me, for example, as an OM fan, but also as somebody that doesn't like to see unsavory incidents, I didn't agree with, you know, the corner flag, people pelting stuff. Let them take the corner, let the game flow, okay? Because obviously, if something did happen in terms of the match was stopped and replayed, we're only hurting ourselves. You know, some people take it too far, and it's the people that hide, you know, in plain sight, not the organizers, not the people that come and support their team. You know, what they want to see is a fair, great game on the field. But Olas is somewhat sneaky. He's trying to one up on OM. And frankly, I'm glad that you know, we didn't basically fall into that trap. And it's his own fault. You know, there was rumors that, you know, one of the glass broke very close to Anthony Lopez, who when he arrived in the stadium wasn't, you know, didn't look 100%, you know, pumped up or happy, or etc. And then the threat of insulting the people of Marseille, insulting the match. You know, OM won a great game. Right, Lyon did well, but they you know, they were eventually beaten. It's the first time in 5 years that this has happened in the league. Let OM enjoy who they are. You know what, enjoy their game, enjoy their victory. Focus on bringing your team up for a 14th position. Focus on your coach. Focus on your team's approach. Focus on your results. To come and then insult Marseille, I didn't see. You know, also I just want to congratulate Iroad for staying away from the press yesterday. You know, in the function, obviously, you know, the OM win, and he could have easily just milked it, and sort of swept over the problem.
It's refreshing that he didn't.
He kept a discreet profile yesterday, because while it was a great time, there's still work to be done. And and Olas, he knows how to play the media game, and he was, you know, at the end of the game, the ball boys tried to do that. Congratulations to Marseille, the little club. And just the absolute pettiness, you know, I didn't appreciate it, and in the end it didn't sour what was a great night for OM, because OM made it all about OM. It was about the players turning up, it was about Villas-Boas' tactics, about the tifo, the record attendance. Everything from the opposition doesn't mean shit, you know, at the end of the day. Let them focus on their own battle to come up with Rudy Garcia, and I hope they enjoy Rudy Garcia, and I hope, you know, good luck to them, and we'll see where they are in the league table come Christmas. You know, when we go over there, it will be the same stuff. And if they win, they've got that victory. You know, they've got that victory. They congratulate themselves, etc. We'll just focus on their own team.
Before we round up the podcast, I just asked to ask you one more thing. We talk a lot about refereeing in this podcast, I guess, as every single Marseille fan does. Olas did mention a few things, and you've seen on Twitter a lot of, you know, I mean, it might be the only time and first time that Lyon fans have actually any legs to stand on about refereeing decisions. What did you make about their claims? You know, the Sanson handball, Ren Adelaïde's penalty shout, the alleged slap from Benedetto to Dubois. What did you make of that?
To be honest, I thought the referee was quite good yesterday. Like, clearly, Ren Adelaide and our dive into the box, that's quite clear. And they didn't get booked, by the way. The slap was nothing, to be honest. Like, that was a mistake. Shouldn't have done that, but Dubois staying like half an hour on the pitch, while it was just something like even a child wouldn't have cried. So I'm not that concerned. Our refereeing was okay. The end of the game, I thought he was a bit too inclined to blow every single time at every single contact, no matter where it was. But yeah, overall, for once, we have been like refereeing quite okay. And I do think that actually referees hate more Garcia than Marseille. So this is our luck.
I sort of agree with Raf. I think the reason why he could be classed as good was that he was bad for both teams. So in the end, it evened out. So I thought he got the main decisions correct. Of course, I mean, at one point we know Anthony Gautier. I thought if he'd missed the Thiago Mendes handball, there might have been a riot. But we've had worse, or clear decision like that not given.
Yeah, we've had worse.
I mean, everybody jumped up and was like, "You better not." So
Yeah.
we didn't use the VAR for that. All the players had their hands up. The fans were, crazy. They were like, "We all saw that. There's no way." And fortunately, he didn't rely on the VAR. But the penalty incident, the management of the game for him from that moment on, I didn't think he had any control, because 6 minutes had passed by the time that the penalty was whistled before Bailly took the penalty. The slap was not, it was not a slap. It was not a slap, and it was not something that, fortunately, because I thought at one point we didn't know what was going on. We just thought that he was checking. I mean, personally, I thought they were still checking the handball, like going to VAR to confirm it. But then, from what I saw, was that there was lasers being shown on Lopez, so he sort of was waiting for like an announcement to go around the stadium or something like this. And then only did I see on Twitter that they were checking the Benedetto slap, which they initially, after showed at halftime, there was nothing going on. But he should have just continued, take the penalty and then come back to whatever it was,
Yeah, that was my argument.
It's hardly going to affect the penalty. And I commend Payet for actually walking away. He walked all the way, probably near to the touchline, just to get away from it all. Because, it really does mess up the psyche. And like you said, Raf, the last 6 or 7 minutes, I felt that he was doing his best to get Lyon back into the game. Obviously, it sounds stupid to say, but there was free kicks galore. Like, everything that happened, the Ronchi yellow card, it was just ridiculous. Like, play the game. He was just allowing sort of Lyon to encroach into OM territory deeper and deeper and deeper. And honestly, I was just simply relieved when Mandanda caught the ball in the 95th minute. And just the whistle went, because I mean, fortunately there was nothing absolutely critical. Okay, you got the key decisions probably okay, but
It wasn't great, but it wasn't the worst we can expect.
Exactly, by far. I mean, I don't go away from that game. If we went to 2-2, I wouldn't be complaining about the referee, essentially.
Yeah. All right. Well, that probably rounds up today's episode. It's a bit of a longer episode. We're just past the hour mark. Thank you very much, guys, for coming on the podcast. It's not the worst game to debrief, I guess, for you guys. But thanks for coming along anyway. If anyone's out there still listening to this recording, in the next couple of days, we're gonna ask. Basically, we're going to ask around for more speakers. So on Twitter, we're just basically going to do like a random poll to see if you want to get involved, just talk about Marseille games, just so we can get some more voices in, and that we don't put on the strings of the same speakers over and over again. But thank you guys for coming along. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope anyone out there listening to the podcast, I hope you enjoy it too. And there's an international break for 2 weeks where we're going to see the brilliant games of France against Andorra and France against Belarus, and I'm sure we'll need to debrief those amazing games, but we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. I'm not sure what game we're playing next. Got a bit
Toulouse.
Toulouse away, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
so at home.
Toulouse away is basically a home game, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Toulouse away, so see in 2 weeks' time. So yeah, thank you very much for listening. And if you guys got a couple of last words to say, and then we can round up the podcast.
That's all good for me.
Any insults to the
That's-
Lyon players?
More to Garcia, but yeah, keep it
I'll
PG.
keep it relatively PC for now.
Cool. All right. So thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. All right. Bye bye, guys.
Alright.